La Asamblea escucha.
The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Carlos Manuel Villanova, President of the Democratic Republic of São Tomé and Príncipe. I request protocol to escort His Excellency, and I invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, distinguished head of state and government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor that I address this honorable assembly, representing São Tomé and Príncipe, a small island state which, like so many others, face the complex challenges of our time. On behalf of the people of São Tomé and Príncipe, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, and I would also like to extend to the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, our warmest congratulations. Excellencies, it is easy for me, as it is for anyone present in this assembly, to say that what stands out in relation to international issues is the uncertainty and insecurity that marks both the present and the future. As a small island state, my country is on the front line of the consequences of climate change, and the climate crisis represents the greatest existential threat to our populations. Although we are responsible for a tiny fraction of global greenhouse gas emissions, we are among those who suffer most from its impacts. Sea level rise, more frequent and intense storms, coastal erosion and loss of biodiversity threaten not only our livelihoods, but also our very existence. It is therefore imperative that the international community strengthens its commitment to the Paris Agreement and ensures that the voices of the most affected nations, like ours, are heard and integrated into concrete actions. We call for global action that is not only ambitious, but also urgent. COP29 on climate change, to be held next November in Baku, Azerbaijan, will be a crucial opportunity to reaffirm the collective commitment to limit global warming to 1.5 Celsius. However, commitments have not been sufficient. We need concrete, immediate actions to mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis. We call on the largest emitters to meet their historical and moral obligations by drastically reducing their emissions and honoring the climate financing promised to developing countries, which are paying the price for a crisis they did not cause. In addition, we call for an expansion of financing mechanisms for adaptation, as we need to strengthen our resilience. We are already investing in innovative adaptation solutions, such as sustainable use of our marine resources and the implementation of renewable energies. However, our efforts need to be scaled up, and this requires the support of the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, remain a beacon for our progress. For us, sustainable development is not a choice, but yes, a necessity. Our vision of the future is based on the Sustainable Development Goals, and it is in this sense that we strive for a balance between economic growth, environmental protection, and social justice. However, the deadline for achieving them is fast approaching, and for many of us, there is still a long way to go. Support for development must be renewed, and new models of partnership between nations must be explored. we reaffirm our commitment to the SDGs, but without an international environment that promotes fair trade, accessible financing and peace, our efforts will be limited. We ask for the support of the international community so that our transition to a green economy can be accelerated, and so that together we can be examples of how sustainable development can transform societies and ensure prosperity for future generations. On the other hand, we cannot fail to mention the importance of strengthening multilateral institutions and ensuring that all states, regardless of their size or economic power, have a voice in global decisions. Multilateralism is our best tool for tackling collective challenges that transcend borders. Ladies and gentlemen, global peace and security face growing threats, from armed conflicts to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The African continent continues to be the scene of protracted conflicts that result in deep and unacceptable suffering. These conflicts demonstrate the need for greater diplomatic intervention and African solutions to African problems. São Tomé e Príncipe calls on the international community to step up efforts to mediate and support the peaceful resolution of conflicts in Africa while respecting the sovereignty of nations. Peace is the foundation on which we build development. Unfortunately, we continue to witness the escalation of conflicts in various parts of the world, such as the recent worsening on the situation in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon. São Tomé e Príncipe reaffirms its firm commitment to the principles of peace and human rights and calls for respect for sovereignty of states and intensification of diplomatic efforts for the peaceful resolution of conflicts. There can be no development without peace, and peace is only possible with justice. Excellencies, the future we want must be built on the foundations of cooperation, solidarity, and mutual understanding. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the interdependence of nations and the need for joint responses to global challenges. We need to continue strengthening multilateralism, promoting the sharing of knowledge, resources, and innovative solutions. São Tomé e Príncipe reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the principles that govern this organization. We believe that, through dialogue and cooperation, we will be able to tackle the greatest challenges of our time, from climate change to poverty, to the promotion of human rights and equity. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations celebrate this year 79 years of existence. This is a lifetime that gives the UN a special status. Indeed, this observation cannot be taken lightly. In fact, it has been almost 8 decades of intense work and unrepeatable experiences like no other organization has achieved in the efforts to obtain and maintain peace and achieve other global public goods. On this occasion, we must praise the inescapable commitment of the Secretary General, whose action on all fronts touches us deeply. Faced with our persistent dilemmas, it is imperative that we bring a new content of hope to the world stage. This is an unavoidable objective and role of the United Nations, but this mission is also ours. The world's current affliction is not inevitability. If we empty the United Nations and if each state incurs the spirit of each fighting for itself, then the result will be to live with no answer global problems such as wars, economic crisis, environmental crisis, and other ills. The world has changed since the creation of this organization. The international system, like its institutions, must evolve to reflect the realities and needs of today. We advocate for the reform of the United Nations Security Council to make it more representative and effective in its mission to maintaining global peace and security. The multipolar world we live in today demands a more inclusive and dynamic UN. In saying this, I emphasize the need to think of Africa as a part of the world. We cannot continue with a Security Council that reflects the power structures of 1945, a period when most of the current African states were still under colonial rule and therefore had no voice in international affairs. This underrepresentation of the continent is also evident in other structures of global governance, such as the international financial institutions, and we urgently need to change this. Excellencies, I would also like to take this opportunity to echo a call that has resounded here in this Assembly for decades: the need to put an end to the economic, commercial and financial blockade imposed against the Republic of Cuba. This blockade is outdated and contrary to the principles of peaceful coexistence and solidarity between nations. The Cuban people have shown resilience, but it is time for the international community, in particular the United Nations, to intensify its efforts to correct this injustice in the name of peace and human dignity. We also reaffirm our support for Morocco's sovereignty and congratulate the political initiatives developed in the search for a peaceful and credible solution to the dispute. We also welcome the strategic projects launched by the Kingdom of Morocco, such as the Morocco-Nigeria gas pipeline and the Atlantic Africa Initiative, which reflect the vision of regional integration and sustainable growth. Excellencies, in conclusion, we would like to reaffirm that our presence here is a testimony to our faith in the United Nations and its ideals. Despite our limited resources, we bring to the global table our tireless will to contribute to a fairer, safer and more sustainable world. São Tomé and Príncipe is ready to do its part and continues to work hand in hand with all the nations present to build a better future for all. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Democratic Republic of São Tomé and Príncipe.